Hello, today with us is Mark Meynell, my good friend. Mark lives in United Kingdom. He is husband, father of two children, and there are actually many hats in his life and ministry, but I will mention just that he is priest, he is director of Langham Preaching for Europe, and he is writer. And he writes a lot about mental health, and actually one of his latest books is on that topic, and the title is When Darkness Seems My Closest Friend. And in this time of pandemic, many people are struggling, and I will just read, Mark, I was recently reading an article at the web page justiceinfo.net, and I will read what I found there. So I'm quoting from their web page. It says, the figures are staggering. According to the Bosnian authorities, 450,000 people are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and 1.4 million have shown at least one symptom of PTSD, out of population of only 4 million. It is not possible to verify those figures, but there is a general consensus that a large part of Bosnia and Herzegovina's population, especially civilians, have suffered or are still suffering psychologically from the consequences of the war. End of quotation. The situation with COVID doesn't help at all. Mark, as I mentioned, you wrote quite recently a book, When Darkness Seems My Closest Friend, and the title of the book is coming from the Bible, from the book of Psalms. I know that Bible speaks a lot about mental health, and what does Bible says about it?
Well, thank you. If you go to the Bible looking for a kind of self-help how-to guide, or the kind of thing that you would pick up in a bookshop that was written by a health professional, you're not going to find that in the Bible. But what you are going to find is individuals, particularly in the Psalms, and I'm glad you mentioned the Psalms, particularly the Psalms, where individuals express the pain and the confusion and the doubts that arise from their experiences. And it's extraordinary to see that here's a book of 3 millennia, perhaps a bit less, but for 3,000 years in the past, you've got people expressing things that actually, well, I found I could relate to directly. And in fact, in some points, it was pretty much the only thing I could relate to from my own experience. So that blew my mind. It was amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you, Mark. That's really helpful. Many people would think that the Bible is written only for Christians. In your opinion, can Bible help non-Christians as well? And what would be your advice for those who are not Christians regarding reading the Bible?
Well, it can be read by anybody. I absolutely believe that, and read profitably by anybody. It's not, it's not as if there are things to hide in it. Yes, there are complicated things. Yes, there are a few things that really are confusing and make you scratch your head. But it's remarkable how readable it is. I think the mistake a lot of people make is to assume you can just start at the beginning and keep going, like, as you might expect from a normal book, a novel or something. You probably could do with some helpful tips about where to start, and then you sort of work out, because it's not sort of necessarily all in time order, and it's not just a story, although there's a story that holds it all together. So I would really recommend somebody, particularly if they're unfamiliar with it, look for the Psalms, which is in the Old Testament. That is usually about halfway through the book, so you just have to open it halfway through and you're usually there. And they cover a range of topics, but you'd be amazed how often they pour out the soul of somebody who is just in pain. And I think that's about being human, isn't it? Anybody can relate to that. Any faith, no faith. Here you've got some reality, some realism in this ancient book.
Hmm. Thank you, Mark. Name of this YouTube channel is Good News. Do you have any good news for the people who struggle with mental health?
I do, but the one thing that I don't have and nobody has is a sort of magic wand where you can do this thing or follow this 5-step thing or take a pill or whatever, and it just sorts it out. Apart from anything else, mental illness is not like physical illness, where often there are some very clear patterns and things that people with the same illness share in common. Actually, the problem with mental illness is that every person's experience is going to be different of it. And so you can't generalize. You can't just say, this is always going to happen, A follows B follows C. I think there are a number of things I would say very briefly. One is, particularly in the light of what we said about the Bible, you can read the Bible and you discover you're not alone. Mm-hmm. At one level, not alone in the sense that, hey, people living hundreds of years before us went through things that actually we can relate to. So we think, okay, look, I'm not the first person on the planet to have this. The second thing is that the God of the Bible steps into the world and gets his feet dirty, if you like. He's not remote in some sort of beautiful palace and he doesn't care less. No, he comes into our world and becomes human, and the Bible ultimately is the story of that. And that means he experiences the highs and actually the deepest lows possible in human life, ultimately dying on a cross. So you have the ultimate sense in which there is a God who knows how we feel. And I think then there's also the sense that actually that there is hope for the future. This is not going to go on forever. And so we're not alone. This is not going to go on forever. And we can find support and help through God's book, God's people, church, and through him directly by praying and seeking him.
Thank you, Mark. This is also very helpful. Thank you very much. If people want to find out more, what reading or internet resources beside the Bible would you recommend? And I already mentioned your book, When Darkness Seems My Closest Friend.
I would recommend that, yes.
I would recommend that one for all of those who do read English. It's not still translated to Bosnian or Balkan languages, but who knows, maybe one.
Maybe that's your job.
Yeah. What would you recommend?
Well, again, I can only recommend things that are in English, unfortunately. But there's a very good website called Mind and Soul. And there you have people in Christian ministry and people who are health professionals with particular expertise in mental illness give a really good sort of bringing together of the best of both, really. As well as people describing their own experiences in all kinds of ways. So that's a very good starting point, I would suggest. It's based in London, but they have people from all over contributing.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Well, do you have any final thought or advice before we finish?
I think the most important thing is if you feel like the world is sort of piling on top of you and you're just overwhelmed, the most important first step is to talk to somebody. Anybody, but ideally someone you trust or love. But if you find you can't find someone like that, I would definitely try and talk to someone in a church or a health professional. Talk to somebody. That's crucial, especially if you're finding that things are getting too much and you are thinking the darkest thoughts possible. And it's been proved again and again that, I don't know the exact statistic, but if somebody who is feeling suicidal talks to somebody, whoever it is, the risk diminishes by half. Just the fact of talking to somebody. But that's just the beginning. It's so much more. Being able to share and talk it really does make all the difference in the world, and I know that from experience. And if you're somebody who doesn't experience mental health problems, the best thing you can do is to be a shoulder for somebody, not give your solutions, not just give your 5-point plan, because that will never work, but to be there to let somebody talk to you and just listen sensitively.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. This is a short interview, and we didn't have much time to say much more. But if any one of you want to hear more or find out more, especially if you speak and read English, you can Google Mark. There are many of his talks, sermons online, and also he is a writer. He published quite a few books, and you can find them online. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Mark, again.
Thank you, Slavko. It's been good to be with you.